here from Dialto.com, and today I'm super excited to have with me in the hot seat Miss Danny J. Johnson from the SweatyBetties.com. And I gotta ask you real quick, does the J stand for Johnson, or is your middle name something with a J?
No, the J stands for Johnson. It's funny, like on Facebook, I couldn't just put Danny J. It made me fill in a last name.
Oh.
So I just put Danny J.
Got it. I love it. I just have always wondered. I probably could have asked you that offline, but whatever.
It's good. It's good because a lot of people actually ask me. So now you all know. The J does stand for Johnson. My middle name starts with an M.
Oh, well then, there we go. We got it covered. So I love Danny's brand, the Sweaty Betties, because their tagline is, "Don't be a bitch." So the first thing I want to ask you about today is, tell me how that was born, how the Sweaty Betties came to be, and why did you choose "Don't be a bitch" as your tagline?
Well, okay, so first off, "Don't be a bitch" was it came as a joke. It actually was a friend of mine and I started this together, and we were going to just start a YouTube channel with our names. And our husbands were like, well, what if people don't know who Danny J is? And I'm like, well, of course they know who I am.
What do you mean?
And so, right, like, I'm so famous. So they started going, you know what, you guys need a name that's like really catchy, and if somebody just sees it on the side, that they're going to want to click on it anyway. So we're at IHOP one Sunday morning, like kind of doing brunch, and IHOP was like the place we'd always go when we were out of town. So we're throwing names back and forth, just totally ridiculous stuff. And the Sweaty Betties came out, and we were like, yeah, that's good, but somebody has to have it. So I looked it up, Googled, looked around, nobody had it. So I'm like, all right, I'm buying this name. And then it was just kind of like, the Sweaty Betties, go, like we were throwing out these different taglines, like, jump on this, get on it. And they're like, don't be a bitch. And so I was like, oh, I like it. And we all started laughing. And I'm like, no, we can't do don't be a bitch. It's going to be too risque. And then I'm like, you know what, let's just do it, because that's going to scare people off who we don't want around.
Right.
And the other thing is that it's kind of morphed into this, like, when you're working out, like I do some hardcore workouts. So it's kind of something we started saying to each other when we're starting to go like, oh, I don't want to finish. We're like, come on, just don't be a bitch, finish. But on the other hand, it's also this community of women that are really supportive. And I think women tend to have this idea of like other girls can be bitches. And so it's like, be there for each other, support each other. So there's a couple different meanings, but really when it started, it was just like a complete joke, like word vomit at IHOP, and it was funny and it stuck.
Some of the best stuff comes from that. Yeah, I love that. So I follow your Instagram all the time, and it's such a great blend of inspiration, motivation, workout tips, and then my favorite is Inappropriate Fridays. So if you're on Instagram, you got to follow. It's at the Sweaty Betties. Same thing goes for Facebook and Twitter. I'll put links and everything below. So Tell us more, because you and I met up in LA a couple months ago. Tell me more about your story, because I interviewed, and if you're watching this and you've been keeping up with the Hot Seat series, you may have watched my interview with Jill Coleman a couple weeks ago, which, Jill had been a figure competitor. And, she kind of, I don't want to say graduated, but she moved on from that. And now she does a lot of, fitness coaching, nutrition, and things like that. And you've sort of had a similar path. So tell me how that all went.
Yeah, actually, I started in the fitness industry. It started way back. I was an acrobat, and I had the story where I was paralyzed, and basically I spent a lot of time working out, trying to get myself rehabilitated because my legs needed strength. And so this is how I got into training. And then I got really in really good shape, and people started asking me, do you compete? Do you compete? And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So I looked into it, and I ended up starting to compete, and I did figure competitions, bikini competitions, and that kind of thing for 3 years. But the last year, I got with a coach where my diet was just very, very strict. I was over-exercising, under-eating. I mean, literally, it was just too much on my body. And so my very last show, right after, I gained like 8 pounds in a day, and then it just started going up from there till I gained like 30 pounds, and I was still training just as hard. I was training hard, I was still dieting hard, and I was just going like, what is wrong with me? And actually, it's funny because it went on for about a year where I was trying to figure it out, like what's going on, why am I so tired? It was just all of this mess. I mean, I was exhausted, I was hungry, I was having cravings, but everything I was doing, I was gaining weight, and like on paper, it shouldn't have been happening. Like my calories in, calories out didn't match what was happening on the outside. And I actually reached out to my friend, Jade, who's Jill's husband, and Dr. Jade from Metabolic Effect, and him and I started working together on a program to kind of get better. So that was last April. So it's been a year, and one of the biggest things I did was I took a long break. I mean, I just had to stop training. I had to eat more food. So it was like opposite of everything you think to lose weight was eat more, exercise less. I mean, it was just like this mind F. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened. And so it took me out of the fitness industry and into more mainstream fitness. And now I'm really about just eating to be healthy, working out to be healthy, not to be extreme, because I can see that the toll it really takes on your body.
Yeah, and I feel like there's tons of brands out there online floating around with similar stories. There seems to be kind of like a timeline for how long people can sustain that lifestyle, going back and forth and up and down. And I can't even imagine the mental battle of looking down and being like, I just gained 8 pounds in 24 hours. It's like a nightmare. So I'm sure there's a whole big mindset component, obviously, other than just eating more, exercising less, figuring that part out. How did you deal with that, like, mental and emotional battle as well?
I will tell you what, that was definitely the hardest part of all of it, because when you're competing, you're used to eating on a strict schedule. You have everything laid out for you, and you kind of get a little bit almost this eating disorder kind of thing. You're very regimented.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the hardest part was the mental part. At first, I freaked out a lot. I cried a lot. I went on antidepressants. I mean, I went to the doctor, and I'm like, something's wrong with me. I'm depressed. And you go through all of these things. And, with Jade, he goes, your dopamine level's low. No wonder you're depressed. You don't realize that all of your hormones mess with your mental part too.
Yeah.
And so I actually even went to a hypnotherapist. I started working with him. That helped a lot. He taught me some techniques like tapping. And I know you may have heard of the tapping.
I love tapping, yeah.
Yes. So I started doing tapping. I was doing hypnotherapy, a lot of meditation. The hypnotherapy to me is more like, it's really like, he calls it self-hypnosis, but to me, it's the same as meditation. Almost, right. It's just a state that you're in, and it's just another word for it. But I did a lot of that kind of stuff to help me, because your anxiety is so high. You're so worried about gaining this weight so rapidly, because it was just very rapid. I mean, I ended up putting on 30 pounds within like 2-3 months.
Wow.
And so it's just, it is definitely this whole mind thing. And when you're used to this sport, which is based specifically on how you look, you don't want to be around people. You're afraid you're getting judged. There's all these other things coming in. And so, yeah, the tapping helped a lot. The meditation helped a lot. I was also told to do Tai Chi. I never got to get to a class, but I think that's something that I still would like to try.
Cool. For years, I've heard of Tai Chi as well, and I've never tried it. Let's chat about tapping for a minute. I actually went through a course earlier this year it's by my friend, actually, Denise Duffel-Thomas, Lucky Bitch Money Boot Camp. So I can tell you right now, you would love Denise's stuff. And part of her whole process, she's like a manifestation, law of attraction kind of coach. Tapping is part of it. And so the tapping points that she focuses on are that karate chop one, forehead next to the eye, under the eye, lip, chin, and then collarbone, and then like the weird spot right here, and then your wrists. So basically, for those of you that have like no concept of what the hell tapping is, it's called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And what you're basically doing is you're saying these things, and it's not like other affirmations, because you're really not trying to like kind of reprogram your mind positively. You're literally tapping out negative stuff. So you might be saying stuff like while you're tapping with like 2 fingers on any of these spots, like, even though I'm scared that I just gained all this weight, like, even though I'm scared that I'm never going to be skinny again, like, I fully and completely accept myself. And you go through all these points. It's really cool. If you're on YouTube watching this video, when you're done, you can just YouTube EFT. There's tons of stuff. But did you have any favorite, like, tapping points? Did you use the same ones that I just went through, or how did you do it?
Yeah, I did almost all the same ones. We did the hand, we did the eye, here, and then the chest. I actually did a point. It was almost like right between your nipples. And he would go through different parts, and he'd have me say, like, he'd have me think of something that, like, a thought that created anxiety, and then we would just breathe through it and say, let it go. And so we go through the whole cycle a couple of times until my anxiety went from like a 10 to a 7, and then from a 7 to a 4 and down. And he asked if there was a certain point where I felt like it worked better or felt better. Yeah. And there was, for me, it was like on my chest. And so he would have me just go directly to that spot instead of doing all of the places where if I was, in a situation where I felt that anxiety, I would just go right there. And it helped so much. I mean, I would just be driving sometimes and I would just start, like tapping on the chest, and it helped so much. It's so, I think I'm open to these kind of things. Yeah. I know some people were like, whatever, but until you try it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I haven't really studied it. I have no idea how it works, but it really does totally work. I was feeling anxious about something just this past weekend, and I'm like, all right, let's do a little bit of this. And one of the other things I read, if you're just like inspired and want to dabble in it, is actually that doing the tapping while you say the things out loud and looking in the mirror is pretty powerful. Because when you get to that, like, I fully and completely love and accept myself, you're literally like making that declaration to yourself, which can be pretty powerful. So I love hearing people use a variety of techniques like that in different contexts. So that's super cool. So what would you say are the women in your audience these days? Is it a lot of competitors or just regular fitness? Like you have a huge Facebook page. You have like 30 or 40,000 people on there. Who comes to you for information?
Well, I seem to get a lot of, let's say demographic will be about 25 to 34 years old. So no college age girls, but kind of women that are maybe just getting married or, in their early 30s, having a career or having kids. So that's kind of my demographic. I find that a lot of them are just people who want to get in shape. They're not necessarily looking to compete or get super ripped or get those kind of abs, which is great because there's a ton of other pages out there for that. Right. I think it is a lot of people they want to lose like 20 to 30 pounds and get it off for good. However, I do have a small subgroup of competitors, like ex-competitors, who I think are just trying to get back to balance and healthy life. So I think for me, it's people that are just looking for balance. They're not looking for extreme lifestyles.
That's cool. There are, because you're right. There's so many extreme lifestyles out there. And I think that sounds like it's totally appropriate because being in that demographic myself, I'll turn 30 in September. I look back over the years of like my development and when I've been in really good shape and as I've gotten out of good shape and gotten back in, don't be a bitch is like a great mantra because that's the number one thing. We're so bitchy to ourselves. It doesn't even make sense. Recently, I looked back at pictures from a photo shoot I did in 2011, and that was bar none the best shape I've ever been in my life. But I have to tell you, I didn't know it when I was in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I was in it, I'm still looking in the mirror, probably pinching this, looking at that, like, oh, I don't know. And now I'm like, God, I want that 2011 body back. But I know that when I do get back in that shape, I'll appreciate it, and I'll see it this time because I'll know to look for it. It's crazy. Again, back to the mental games, how that works. So what else do you have going on? I think you mentioned earlier. So Jade, Dr. Jade, who Danny mentioned from Metabolic Effect, is one of my favorite people on the planet. You guys know what a huge fan I am of Metabolic Effect, and I've done a lot of my training with them. You said that maybe you guys are cooking up some metabolic repair, something like that?
Yes, yeah. Jade actually started a metabolic damage repair program, but he contacted me recently, and him and I are going to work on either a webinar series or some other kind of program because I know personally I get hundreds of emails. I mean, I have like a folder of them, and I can't answer each and every one of them, and there's very specific. I mean, everybody's story is similar, and then there's other situational things. And so I feel bad because I'm not a doctor. I can't go into all of the details, but I do know what worked for me, and I do know that some of the things that worked for me can work for everyone. For example, the tapping, the hypnosis, the Tai Chi, I know that you have to do something to fix this part before you fix the body. Right. So those are some things that I want to share more of, get into more detail. And Jade is the whole hormone doctor side. I mean, he knows a lot of the hormone. He's a genius. He's a genius. Yeah.
I default to them all the time because I'm like, just go to them for the science. They're better at it than anybody I know.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I used to think, like, I'm kind of a nerd that way. I love reading about all this stuff. But you know what? My memory, like, he's just got it. Like, yeah. There's no question.
Fantastic at explaining that, for sure.
Yep. So Jade and I are working on a program very soon, and I'm actually going to be speaking at an event of his in September as well, the Time Millionaires event. So I mean, same as you. I can't say enough great things about him, and I'm excited just to get something out there to help all these girls and women that are emailing me, because I know how scary it is. I mean, it basically lasted for 3 years, and you don't know where to go, and there's not a lot of answers.
Yeah. So there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. What's your favorite? Like, what's your favorite? I know you do a lot of, I see you talking about supplements and meal. I think you've been doing these delivery meals lately.
Oh yeah, I just became an ambassador for Simply Fit meals.
So,
yeah.
What's your favorite super healthy meal that's like, doesn't look like it'd be amazing, but it really is right now?
Oh my gosh, I've been craving lately, like it's so simple, but I've just been craving salmon, like with some, I don't know, black things on it, like some kind of seasoning.
Some black stuff on it. You guys make that.
Yeah, I don't want it to be blank. Like it needs to have some like texture and crunchiness on it.
Yeah.
Salmon, sweet potatoes, and like chopped up asparagus, and then I just like to mix it all together like in one big mush of a bowl and eat it all at once.
That's great. I love it. So if you are watching this video, check the description. I'm putting all of Danny J's links down there. Follow her, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. This way you'll know. Get on her email list at thesweatybetties.com. If you are someone that has been in a situation, if you're listening to her talk about this metabolic damage and you're like, oh crap, that kind of sounds like me, follow her so you can see what she's up to, get her advice, know when her program's coming out, and if you have any other questions and stuff, leave them in the comments below the video, and we'll see you guys later. Danny, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Liz.
We'll see you later.